So we started a new series last week where we're trying a few things differently. Rudolph and I are going to try to pair throughout these next few weeks. We're going to each teach a moment. And last week, if you remember, we started talking about the two ways that we focused on last week. The series is the ways that people connect with God. And we said there's 9 ways or 9 pathways. And last week we talked about the traditional pathway. Rudolph had to admit that he's more traditional than he admits. I think that we're all probably, there's a part of each one of us that senses these paths. I think that one of the interesting things I've been reflecting on since last week is how you can take a look at Jesus and you can see all of these paths in his own life. You can see how he practiced. So in one sense, this series is not about finding your way and going about your business. It's really about seeing how rich and how deep the way to God really is. That you might actually be struggling on a path that you haven't discovered is not your natural groove. You know, a train does not run very well if it's off the tracks, right? You need that track to make it efficient. And so for some of us, I think we're going to discover that track, maybe a way of practicing and journeying in our faith. But I don't want you to just look at it in that way. I want you to also be thinking about how all of these paths can enrich and fill out our spiritual journey, our spiritual experience with God. So we also talked last week about the intellectual path, and it's interesting because I still feel convicted about the things I didn't say. My intellectual baggage is hanging on. I'm like, I wish I'd have said this, I wish I'd have said this, and why didn't I say this? I should have kept better notes. So God's dealing with my over-intellectual faith. And this morning, we're not talking about that. This morning, Rudolph has given me a challenge to speak on one that I don't even know how to pronounce. The asceticism. Is that how you say it? Asceticism. Say that loud with me. Asceticism. Asceticism. Well, let's just say we're right, okay? Yes, hopefully. But it's much easier to understand than to pronounce, I promise you. It's got way too many vowels and way too many consonants together for me. But this is what the word means. It's from Greek, and the Greek actually means to exercise or to train. So this is interesting that this kind of connecting with God is very associated with effort and exercise and training, right? Paul says it's profitable to work out the body, but it's even more profitable to work out the spiritual muscles. So this is interesting that this word asceticism is a lifestyle characterized by abstinence from sensual pleasures, often for the purpose of pursuing spiritual goals. I read about one of St. Francis's followers who the first time he put butter onto a piece of toast, he vowed to never ever do it again because it was way too pleasurable. So he only ate dry toast from then on. This is sort of the idea of like, you know, and my dad was a little bit like this. Every year he would pick something to give up, like something that would be impressive, that we'd all look at him and go, wow, you gave that up for the whole year? No sugar? For the whole year. No red meat for the whole year. Wow. But see, it's very different. People can do that. My dad did it out of self-discipline and to show us how impressive his self-discipline was. But this is a little bit different. This is not for discipline's sake. This is for the sake of God. It's putting this effort out to be disciplined for God's sake, for God's purposes. It's very different. We can flex our muscles and show our discipline in many ways. This is different. They're taken so seriously that ascetics might withdraw from the world for their practices, or they might continue to be a part of their society, but they live in contrast to their society. We'll talk a little bit about what that might look like. But typically they adopt a frugal lifestyle, characterized by the renunciation of material possessions and physical pleasures. They spend time fasting while concentrating on the practice of religion or the reflection upon spiritual matters. So this picture, sort of a monkish life, right? Sounds like this idea of giving up and sacrificing, withdrawing, and sort of like a hermit. Yes, one of the things I read said that they are called to listen to the silence. It's like I said last week, that there's this call among intellectuals to look at the mystery and try to figure it out. It's like this constant pull to look at, this is a constant pull into the silence, into the richness of silence that you can easily miss by all the distractions that we feel in our world. So this is what this aesthetic looks like. Now there's, interesting I said at the beginning about Jesus' life and how we can see different things. This life in Jesus, we see in Jesus' life, especially in Mark's gospel, we see this almost aesthetic pattern in his life. This constant this is the first chapter of Mark. I mean, Mark just gets off to a bang. He's healing people, he's casting out demons right in the first chapter. But before the chapter ends, it says the town is full at the house where Jesus is healing, and it says, in the early morning while it was still dark, he got up and he left the house. He went off to a solitary place and he prayed. It's interesting if you think about what kinds of spiritual practices Jesus had, and this clearly is this idea. He even taught his disciples, when you pray, go off into a solitary place. It's interesting that Jesus seems to model the value of the pattern of this type of life. Not exclusively, all of them, but this one seems to, in a very profound, deep way, get at some of the intimacies of his relationship with God. One of the things I'd like to say is that Jesus came from a deep tradition in the Jewish faith, where they understood asceticism. Okay, there was even sex around the time. I mean, we hear a lot about the Pharisees and the Sadducees in Jesus' day, right? Those are the two big ones that get the top billing. But there was also a very popular group called the Essenes, and they also were like a theological group, but they were ascetics. They moved themselves outside of the cities. They wanted to give up things to practice God and to practice their faith with God. And this came from a Jewish tradition called the Nazirite vow. Basically, in the book of Numbers, you'll see this. This is what the writer says. Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when a man or woman makes a special vow, the vow of a Nazirite, to dedicate himself to the Lord, he shall abstain from wine and strong drink. He shall drink no vinegar. He shall watch no rugby, whether made from wine or strong drink. Oh. Sorry, I got off track there. Whether made from wine or strong drink, nor shall he drink any grape juice, nor eat fresh or dried grapes. All of the days of his separation he shall not eat anything that is produced from grapevine, from the seeds, even to the skin. All of the days of his vow of separation, no razor shall pass over his head. I just realized that Rudolph was a Nazirite until recently. We have a couple other Nazirites in training here as well. He shall be holy until the days are fulfilled for which he separated himself to the Lord. He shall let the locks of his hair on his head grow long. All the days of his separation to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead person. So this is a vow that many scholars believe John the Baptist took. I mean, if you look at the way that John the Baptist lived his life, it's probably the fact that he took this vow. This was a vow that people would sometimes take for their whole lives, but sometimes only for periods of their lives. If you remember earlier this year, we went through a fasting period as a church. Now, I believe a lot of the new people we see around here, a lot of the stirring of the Spirit is actually from that time. We as a community, we felt a season of, for the sake of what God wants to do, a pulling away, a drawing in, a giving up. So sometimes it's somebody becomes sort of monkish their whole life, and they take this vow of, I'm going to be poor, or I'm going to not eat red meat. Or it's just for a season. Now, it's interesting because we can look and see that there was many things about Jesus' life that clearly he didn't take a Nazirite vow. Like, this is in Matthew's gospel. He says, the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and you say he is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. So clearly, it seems on this statement to say, and he actually even contrasts this earlier by saying, John, my cousin, he came not eating and not drinking. He was abstaining, and you said he was a demon. It's like, none of the disciplines are going to satisfy them. So he didn't even play their games. So we don't really know very, very outwardly how Jesus practiced. Just because people said that he was a drunkard does not mean that he drank wine. Now, at the communion table, they did have wine there at the communion table. So it starts to get very clear that Jesus didn't necessarily practice a Nazirite vow, but he had a life marked by asceticism. I tend to think of this place, this path as a desert path. We tend to think of the spiritual path on the mountaintop. You go to the mountain, you see that beauty and that view. And we will talk about the naturalist who feels the presence of God through nature and grows. But when aesthetics draw away, it's not to a pretty place. Because those will be distracting. that will call you outside of yourself. It's to a desert place. This is redeeming those unbeautiful places. Aesthetic can be there, but he doesn't need that outward beauty. He doesn't need that outward comfort. He doesn't need anything else to just be in the presence of God. That takes practice. To just know that God is enough. To feel the presence of God so strongly and not need the beauty of the Hermanus sea line and the whales jumping. To just have that inner sense of His presence so rich and full. That takes practice. It takes practice. These people who lived in these caves, this is actually a caves called the Qumran caves, where the Essenes from Jesus' day lived. And they became quite famous in our world in 1947. Some shepherd boys in these caves found some of the oldest texts we have. We found basically the library for the Qumran community, the Essenes. These were the people who, from before and after Jesus' day, they separated themselves out. What we know from that is that they practiced this discipline almost to the point of becoming extremely judgmental about everyone who didn't join their community. This is sort of the downside of this one. It's like, I saw it in my dad. I saw that my dad looked at all of us all year long like, you guys are just lacking, man. You just can't do what I can do. And I know my dad's going to watch this and he's going to give me a scat call and he'll choke me all out. We'll take that on, Dad, theologically, okay? But I want to make a point here that this is sort of the shadow side of being able to feel that discipline. It's a very easy temptation to start looking down at other people who can't exhibit that kind of discipline. And make the spiritual life about that discipline. And it's a constant challenge for the aesthetic kind of a mind to remember that this is only a path. This is not the destination. How I practice this path does not qualify or disqualify me from getting the prize. Now it's interesting though, I want to focus it down on Jesus' life as I close here. Because towards the end of Jesus' ministry, He said this: I say to you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. It's interesting because at this point in Jesus' ministry, He's already sort of defended the feast mentality, not the fasting mentality, but the feast mentality of His disciples. He in fact said, if the bridegroom is here, it's time to party. It's time to have a good time. Now here, it's a different time. This is towards the end of His ministry. This is where He's about to face the passion. And this is Him now making a vow that, think about this. Think about yourself and the things that God challenges and asks you. And we know the scriptures tell us that Jesus was challenged by the things God asked Him, just like we are. We see Him praying at the Garden of Gethsemane for another way, please. So much so that He sweated blood, the passion of that. Think of the mindset of that kind of a person who is willing to not just give up sugar for the year. There was no mistaking where He was going. He knew it in His bones, and His blood was pouring out from passion of it. I would say that anybody who has walked that path, and there's been thousands and thousands of martyrs in the faith, but anybody has gone into this life where they have experienced God being enough so much, like Jesus, that they're willing to give it all up. It teaches me a little bit about connecting with my Savior, to just think about what kind of a practice of sacrifice. We know He fasted in the desert for 40 days and He resisted those temptations, but I believe that His life was a constant, I'm not going to take advantage of this right now for their sake. I'm not going to glory in this right now for their sake. For our sake, He limited Himself. The scriptures say that He made Himself nothing for our sake. I had a friend who practiced this way. And these are the three things that he told me, and I found them on the internet, and I realized that he didn't discover them, that somebody else even put them out there. But this is the way of the ascetic, and this is the truth that their life can reveal, that the simple is sufficient. That the bliss is actually from within, and that the best thing to have plenty of is frugality. To have this opposite of our world. We think of having plenty things. The aesthetic says, if if the degree that I can have few things, I can experience God. This is my friend who taught me these things. This is Shane Claiborne. He's a brother from Philadelphia, or a brother from another mother, you can say it like that. Except that this guy challenged me and taught me so many things I don't even stand in the same. We have mentors in our life, and we have brothers that stand beside us, and we have people that we're mentoring. This dude, I was looking up at his sandals all the time. Shane calls himself an urban monk, because in the best of cases, the monks live not completely in isolation, but in relationship to the mainstream church. So when they come around us, they challenge us a little bit and move us a little bit more radical in our faith. Because we all need a little kick in the butt sometimes to move a little bit further down the road. At the worst of times, they stand and look down at us and say, oh, you guys are just going to hell in a handbasket. Why don't you take it serious? That's the constant tension here. Shane walked that tension with such beauty. Nicole met him, she could say that when you're with this man, you feel like you're the only person in the universe. But I know he loves being alone with God more than anything. Yeah, I spent some time with Brother Teresa. We could teach a whole class on his thinking, but I just want to end with this. This is what Shane did. He was accepted into medical school at Columbia University, one of the top universities in the United States. And he was doing his pre-graduate studies in an Eastern university, which is a theological school in Philadelphia. And on campus, somebody heard that a bunch of homeless people in the wintertime moved into an old building. And the Catholic Church owned the building. It was an old abandoned cathedral. And that when the word got to campus, it had been discovered that they were actually kicking them out. And that the church was bringing legal action and bringing the fire marshals in to remove them from the church. And a fire started in Shane and a group of his friends, so much so that by the end of the term, they had all dropped out of school and moved into an abandoned building just down the street. They first moved into the church with these people. And that, I can't even begin to tell you the impact that he's making across the world from that simple sacrifice. He's written tons of books published by Zondervan. He's been to South Africa, he tours around the world. We met with the last president of the United States. He's been on CNN. He's busy making this contrasting ascetic life attractive to young people who really want to take their faith seriously. Because I'll tell you what we need in our world more than anything is not better ways of telling the ideas about God. We need better models of living the life of God. Models that cut against the ways the world misshapes us. And I believe this ascetic life, that's why I'm speaking with passion, because I need it more than anyone. I feel that call in me that sometimes I neglect. I believe all of us do. We have that call in us. I want to encourage you this morning with these final two things. I'm sorry, Roloff, if I took too much time, but I give you permission to go until 2 o'clock. Just kidding, everyone. This is the last thing. This was in the resource that Roloff shared, which is a fantastic resource. It's helping guide some of these thoughts this week. And this is some practical things that all of us, no matter if we're aesthetic or not, listen to this. Be intentional about creating time and space to spend alone. You're never alone, you're always alone with God. Live simply, seeking to eliminate distractions in the everyday realm, and live minimalistically. Can invite fresh air and open spaces into the life of aesthetic. So try fasting. And it's interesting, he says, not just from food, maybe also from TV or Facebook. Practice silence on your own, or go in a group and attend a retreat. Sometimes being silent in a group of people can be so transformative. Wake up early. This is an easy one. This is one we're trying to practice with our family. We're trying to get up a little bit earlier than the rush to go to school and spend time in prayer and worship and study. And then this one is the last one. This one anybody can practice. This one is, I think, what the monks have given to the church. Use the daily things that you have to get done. The maintenance of your life, the washing the car, the doing the dishes. You can learn to see that as an act of worship in a time with God. Then you're well on your way to being a monk. But the kind of monk we really need, the kind of monk that can not stand off in the monastery, but can walk among us and show us what another way looks like. Amen. Amen. I gotta work on my transitions better. Some sort of like... Good morning. Good morning.
Are you will?
Yes.
You must really go and watch a couple of videos or clips on YouTube about Shay Claiborne. It's challenging. I remember a Christian said to me that when you go and visit him in his place, that you will definitely not sleep on a mattress, because if you had the mattress, he would give it away. That brings us to caregiving. Is one of the greatest challenges that I've ever came across in my spiritual life was when I read the book, The Kingdom of God is Within You, and Louis Tolstoy said, Jesus said, if you have 2 coats, give one away. And then his comment was, what if he meant it? That statement bombed out my mind. I didn't touch that book for probably more than a week because it consumed my mind. Because I know what I've got in my cupboard. And then you meet somebody like Shane that makes his own clothes because he decided to live differently. And yes, we do not need to go to the extreme. We can live out our Christianity and caregiving day by day as we are. Now what's interesting is that when we look at the Bible, we see that God called certain people as evangelists. Isn't that so? But He called everybody, every one of us, to be an evangelist in the small. To preach the gospel, to share the gospel, even though we are evangelists in Mantle. And I think when it comes to caregiving, it is exactly the same. There's some of us here that it's the way to connect to God. Is when they look after people and they see things change in the people's lives and they feel, wow, this is it. And when they experience the love of God in people's lives, they feel closer to God. And I want to challenge you, if it's not you, it does not exclude you. Because all of us are called to give. All of us are called to care and to share. When I was thinking about caregiver, like, who was the greatest caregiver on earth in history? And I Googled it. And then I saw these names and lists of people, and then at this stage it just struck me, but what about God? Isn't He the greatest caregiver? The moment we say that He's our healer, it's because He cares so much that He wants to heal us. He's our deliverer. He wants to care for us and deliver us. Provide for us, our friend, our counselor, our father. Put the names in, that's just the beginning. Isn't that the role model that we start from? Because we were created in the image of our Father. And if we were created in the image of our Father, then something of that is within us. To care for one another, to be there for one another. 2 Corinthians 1 verse 3 says, Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comfort us in all our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with a comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. Now, Christian years back read this from the Message. And it had a huge impact on my mind and my spirit. And I'm going to read to you this from the Message. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and God of all comfort. He comes alongside us when we go through hard times, and before you know it, it brings us alongside someone else who is going through hard times so that we can be there for the person just as God was there for us. Isn't that awesome? Have you noticed that sometimes we experience certain things in life? And then we meet people that's going through the same things. And all of a sudden it is not about the academic mindset that you've learned, but it's what's ingrained here that can make a change. I think that's... Just look at this, the chairs. When I saw that picture, I just had to... What do you think is the chair on the left saying to the chair on the right? What if he's saying nothing? He's just there. What if we sometimes want to say too much? All we need to do is to be there. And I think when it comes to caregiving, it's that place where Jesus called us and say, listen, I want to call you from a mindset, I want to call you from words, and I want to call you to a place of just being. And to be practically there for somebody. And I don't know about you, but if you give somebody food, you don't need to say nothing. If you put finances and money in an envelope for somebody, you don't need to say nothing. So there's certain things that we don't need to say anything. So I think in terms of caregiving, it suits any personality type. It suits the personality type that is this extrovert that just bubbles all the time. And it suits the quiet one. They don't want to speak in front of people. Or don't have the words to say. And we can do it from the place where we are. It comes alongside us when we go through hard times. And before you know it, it brings us alongside someone else who is going through hard times so that we can be there for the person just as God was there for us. I think that's beautiful. Paul says, I go through all things for the sake of the elect, their salvation and their glory in Christ Jesus. It's interesting that he's saying that he is going through it for the sake of other people. Now try and teach that to the guy that believes in prosperity. I believe that God wants to prosper us. But I don't believe that we need to prosper all the time. There's seasons that we need to be the chair with a leg that's missing. So that we can understand and have a heart when we have the means to be a strong chair for the chair that's got off leg. That makes sense? And I've got a friend that really challenged me and asked for me. I am a person that loves to give. But whenever I'm with this friend of mine, I just realize how little I give. Because by heart, he's a giver. He just gives away, and every time I sit with him, he just challenges me. The portion that Jesus says, for I was hungry and you gave me food, I was thirsty and you gave me drink, I was a stranger and you welcomed me, I was naked and you clothed me, I was sick and you visited me, I was in prison and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer, say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and fed you, or feed you, or thirsty and gave you drink? And he did. And when did we see you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and clothed you? And then when did we see you sick or in prison and visited you? And the king answered them, truly I say to you, as you did it to the ones of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. Isn't that a difficult one? If you fed people, if you visit them in prison, the person that you don't even know, that you will welcome them in your house, those who are hungry, those who are naked, if you clothe them, if you fed them, if you give them a place to stay, you have done it unto me. That's caregiving. So that means that it is part of God's heart to care for people. See, that's the whole, I think it's a portion. Okay. Lauren Daigle. She's heavy in the news now. You seen that? She was at, what's her name, Ellen DeGeneres show. She's a gospel singer. She's #1 in the world top music.
Gospel.
No, not gospel. World. Yeah, the regular music chart. She's #1. She's a gospel singer. Isn't that awesome? Now, she was at that woman, Ellen DeGeneres' show, and then the Tonight Show of Jimmy Fallon, she was there as well. In fact, these are the two biggest shows in the world. She's been on both. Every time singing gospel songs. So, you know what happened when she was first at Ellen's show? The Christians criticized her. How can you be on a show of a person that does not uphold our lifestyle? And they criticized her. I just wish that the people that criticized her would do 1% of what she did and reach 1% of the people that she reached through that show. But anyway, let's leave it there. And then when she was at Jimmy Fallon's show, he asked her about it. And this was her reply. The second we start drawing lines around the people are able to be approached and the second we start drawing lines around which people are able to be approached and which aren't, we've already completely missed the heart of God. And here, Daniel went on to comment, I don't have all the answers in life, but one thing I know is that I can't choose who I am supporting to be kind to, supposed to be kind to, and who I'm not, because that's the mission right. Be who Christ was to everyone as well. So she said, I can't be who to be kind to. Now when I read this story came to mind, and it's about caregiving. I think it is one of the greatest stories. Luke 10:29. But he desired to justify himself and said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Remember then Jesus told the story about the Good Samaritan? And you all know the story. We taught it in Sunday school and that whole thing. So go and look at the racial connection within that. Today's time would be a farmer driving in his 4x4, getting hijacked, and a Madonna on his bicycle comes along and puts him on his bicycle and take him to a place to be cared for. That it would be in today's time. Okay? And then Jesus asked the question, which of these three do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? Now, obviously the lawyer had to answer. He said, the one who showed him mercy. And Jesus said to him, you go and do likewise. Have you noticed something in that? The guy asked, who is my neighbor? And Jesus never answered it. Jesus said to him, go and be a neighbor. Stop asking the question of who is my neighbor. Go and be a neighbor. Doesn't matter to who, to everybody. Jesus was so subtle in answering things. That's an intellectual part. I've got a friend, I often say to Ned, I've got a friend that is so skilled in words that he will tell you straight out in your face how stupid and bad you are, and you will feel good about it. You will walk away with a smile. I don't think Jesus has that ability. Just to twist their words and show them that that was a stupid question. Be one. Stop asking who is. Be one. Now, there's a twist in the story. As much as God wants us to care for one another, there's a flip side to it as well. And this is where the portion where we sometimes need to withdraw from people to go in solitude to be recharged like Jesus did. Jesus ministered among the people, and as Christians said that there was times that he withdrew and that he was all by himself. All over the story about Martha and Mary, and how Martha and Mary took Jesus in. Martha was just like cooking up the storm, busy in the kitchen, and all Mary did was sitting at his feet. And then Martha came in and said to Jesus, don't you care? I mean, she's just sitting there doing nothing. I have to do all the chores. Don't you care about it? Don't tell her. Deliver, Mama, come and do something. And Jesus said to her, Martha, Martha, you missed it. She picked the better place. See, there's a place where giving and doing can consume us to the place where we do not enter into the presence of God anymore. And I think especially when it comes to pastors, it's easy to happen. Where you don't have time or make time to go and sit in the presence of God because you're always so busy. And then all of us in life as well. Because we're busy with things and which we need to do, but we do not make time. And then the other one, and when it comes to caregiving, is they call it the rescue syndrome or the white knight syndrome, where we are so consumed by helping people that we are actually disabling them to function on their own. That makes sense? That is standing next to that chair with a broken leg all the time. And the chair with the broken leg never learns that there's a need for that leg because I'm upholding it the whole time. See, there's a thin line that we need to discern how to help people up to when, how to help them, and to empower them to stand on their own. The same Jesus that said, we need to give our cloak away is the same one that says, remember, we're going to have the poor with us always. And he quoted Deuteronomy. Does that mean that we should stop because we're going to have the poor always? It is help them, pace yourself, pace your resources to help them to help themselves. The rescue syndrome is the biggest obstacle to support others in their situation. The belief that we know better than someone else how to resolve their life or are somehow better equipped to do so leads up to the intervene or try to rescue them in a way which disempowers them and inhibits their ability to resolve it themselves. And I think a lot of churches are guilty. See, there's a portion, what did Paul say in Corinthians? I go through all things, I go through certain things. God strengthens me so that I can come alongside. It says, I go through all things for the sake of the select, their salvation and their glory in Christ Jesus. So I need to go through things. And if I need to go through things, sometimes you need to go through things as well. And sometimes we want to rescue one another too quickly. And if I rescue you too quickly, then I rob you from what you need to learn in the process. Years back I preached a sermon about going through the desert. Do not curse your desert. We need the desert to shape us and to create in us who we're supposed to be. So yes, I acknowledge that when a person does not have food, we just leave him, he will die. I'm not talking about that. What's that? Elspiel. What's Elspiel in English? Elspiel said that he doesn't understand. The moment he's taught his donkey to stay without food, the stupid thing just died. That's not who we are. We need to be wise in counsel and wise in what we do. But don't be so naive to think that you help people by helping them all the time. See, 1 Timothy 5 is an interesting portion. You must go and read it. Paul speaks about the widows and the orphans. And if there's one thing that people throw rocks at the church is because we don't look after the orphans and the widows. But if you look at chapter 5, go and read through it. It's a challenging thing. It says that it gives actually a list that the widows had to do these things. He spells them up. And then he says they need to be then above 60. Then only you are allowed to put them on the list to be looked after. But only if they do not have children. If they have children, their children must look after them first. And then he says, if they are younger than 16, and you help them and you feed them and you support them, they will learn to grow idle, and all they will do is go from house to house and scheme and talk bad and gossip. That's interesting. Then Paul goes so far to say, and then he makes a normal comment, and he says that anyone who does not support his family, meaning they're too lazy to work, do not want to work, he lost his faith and is worse than the unbeliever. And that's not about somebody that wants to work. I'm talking, what he's talking there is about somebody who do not want to work. So, what Paul is saying is that there's a way in approaching people. There's a way when you help people. And that you need to sit. And that what is interesting is where he draws a line when it comes and he says, first you need to help the believing widows. Those who are faithful, those who serve other people, and those who are dedicated to God. Why? That's interesting. Because we need to support our family first. Isn't that the same verse that says he that doesn't support his family is worse than an unbeliever? And now he comes and makes it a spiritual thing again. It says we need to serve the widows, those who are in need. After we screen them, after we help them to function, we need to help them financially, help them whatever, to be sustainable. And then with the resources that's left, we can go out and help other people. Go and read through that. That's quite challenging. Now, Christmas is coming up. To make this practical, do you know that over Christmas time, it is the time where the suicide rate is the highest in the year? Who do you know that lives alone, that's lonely, that does not have a family in their minds, or a family that's isolated, that does not have a broad in different ways? What about inviting them over for a meal over Christmas time? If you've got a family and you don't want to draw them into your family Christmas meal, fine. But invite them at least to a meal. Be there for them at Christmas time. It's just one idea. Not challenging. And then one that we spoke of on Wednesday, Anton mentioned, is we've got a family here, and we've got people that can't change a light bulb. Why not put it on the group? Listen, I need somebody to change the light bulb for me. Is there somebody that can? And then allow the family to step up and say, listen, I've got time, I can do it maybe tomorrow, or whatever. Let's support one another, let's take care of one another. See, that's why the group, if you're not on the WhatsApp group and you're part of RAIN, please put your name on it. But to me, it's I don't want to say a sacred group, it's a wrong word, but I don't want people to be on the group that's not part of the church. Because that is a family chat. You hear what I'm saying? I'm not on your close family chat. Why? Because I'm not part of that family. But I'm part of this close family. And we are part of this. Yes, the rest is part of God's family as well as we are. But this is a close-knit family. And I think it's the group needs to be a safe place where I can say, listen, if you've got 2 breads tonight, don't you have one for me? Does that make sense? I've got a globe that needs to be changed. Don't you want to do it for me? I need prayer. I'm in this place. And it's devastating. Please pray for me and put it on the group so that we can pray for one another. And I know it's happening. That is happening. And I love it to see how people respond and pray for one another. May we be a church that love the people out there. See, the problem with the ascetics, what they were called the desert fathers, was they withdrew themselves and they lived in the desert all by themselves. And Jesus said, go out, make disciples. And that's the balance between the two. We need both in our lives. We need to withdraw, to recharge, to reach out. But it's also we withdraw to be able to care give. Does that make sense? May you experience God's love and His presence when you withdraw into solitude. And may you experience God's love and God's presence when you step out to do and to give. And to be wise when you do that as well.